To join with your camera, please feel free to turn on your camera. We'd love to see you and what you're doing. And we have, I'm Joy, and on the other side is Kesley, and we are your hosts tonight. We are here for the Hats for Harris. So excited that you're joining. Looks like we're getting everybody coming in. Just to introduce ourselves for anybody who's new, Kesley and I are sisters, and we were on a trip this summer and decided that we understood our assignment, and we decided to go ahead and put out some patterns for patriotic hats and put up videos and just start encouraging people to make hats for the Women's March so that we can all have patriotic hats to embrace the American flag and to bring that back into our worlds where we felt like we weren't as embraced with the American flag as we had been in the past. So we are super excited. You guys are all here to make patriotic hats with us. And we have a little presentation to do to give you some ideas, some more ideas, and to talk about how you're doing today and tonight. And on the Facebook page, I can't even tell you how happy I am to see how many hats people are making. And I'm so impressed at some of the creativity I'm seeing, the variety of combinations, and just what you guys are doing. You're taking it and just running. And it's really fun to see that. So, Kesley, do you think we have most everybody here?
I think we can go ahead and start and people will still be coming in.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share our presentation. And I'll put that into presenting mode. Oh, and get back to the beginning of it. All right. We have 6 weeks until the March. So we are into like our really creative side and making and turning ourselves into little manufacturers for our hats. I just wanted to kind of ground us and remind us of why we're doing this. We're doing this because we're in support of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And she has a beautiful quote here that I try to look at as often as possible to remind myself why I'm doing this and why I think it's so important. She says, "Our unity is our strength, and our diversity is our power." And that's why we're making these hats. It reflects our enthusiasm for her leadership and symbolizes our commitment to equality and justice. And on the day of the march, we want to wear our hats proudly, united in support of progressive values and women's rights, and make our voices heard for a brighter future. So just a little grounding and a reminder for why we're doing what we're doing. We've given you guys tons of ideas over the last few weeks with lots of different videos and things to watch. And I see some of the same common questions coming up as we're going along, and that happens to be around gauge. So what I wanted to do is take a little time tonight and do a quick lesson on gauge and just sort of talk about what that is and why it's important. There are some folks who are sharing that their hats are turning out too big or too small, and they are wondering why that's happening. And so that's why I thought it would be kind of fun to do this. It has a little bit of math in it. I am math adverse, or at least I say I'm math adverse, but then when it comes to knitting, I'm math positive because we have to do math. so um, so gauge is in knitting, it refers to the number of stitches, and in crochet, it refers to the number of stitches in the row in an inch and how many rows you also have in an inch. So we're supposed to knit a 4 by 4 inch swatch of our fabric using the yarn and the needle that we want to use because that will create the gauge size. So that means that's how big your fabric is going to be. Your needle and your yarn come together to create this fabric. So it's important to think that as we're knitting, we're truly making fabric, and we're doing it like 3D printers. We're doing it in a way that it just comes all out into something really cool. So wrapping your head around that can be kind of crazy, but also wrapping your fabric around your head can be kind of crazy. So thinking about that gauge and how that works, I thought it would be good just to do some easy math and say that in an inch we have 2 stitches, and in that's in a row, and then we have 3 rows that are in an inch. So when we're looking at our knitting, we're looking at those V's that each knit stitch creates. So when you knit your 4 inches, you're taking your tape measure and putting it over your swatch and counting those stitches. So we'll take a look at that in a minute. But just for now, let's pretend that you made your gauge swatch and your 2 stitches per inch. And then measuring your head is really important. So, this is what we want to put our hat on. So whoever you're making your hat for, you want to take that tape measure and wrap it around your head where you would have your hat fit and look at what is that measurement. When I do that on my head, I'm 23
But can you stop
inches.
sharing? Sorry, can you stop sharing so we can see
So you can see
we
me
can
measure
see
my
your face?
head.
Yeah,
Of course.
there you go.
So yeah, so flexible tape measure is really important. We should also do a thing on like what's in your knitting bag, and we should all share what's
Oh yeah.
in our bags, whether you're crochet or knit. I'm more of a knitter, so I'll probably say knit, but I'm really inclusive of everybody because our diversity is our unity. So, so when you measure your head, you're going to get that flexible tape measure out, and you kind of want to measure right where you would wear your hat. And if you want your hat to go over your ears, make sure that your ears are under that tape measure. This is really 1970s cute-ish. So you get your measurement, and my head is 23 inches. So when I did the hat pattern, I measured off of my size, which is 23 inches. You may or may not be the same as I am. So that's why that gauge is really important. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation. And all right, so we have that 23-inch head circumference. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So then the next thing you want to do is think about ease, and ease is really important. Not everybody understands what ease is, but ease is when you have a stretchy fabric. It Because it's stretchy, you want to subtract some of the measurement that you have to allow for that stretch. So when we're making our knitted fabric, we're going to want that to stretch over our heads. And for the most part, I take about an inch off for ease. So I'll subtract 1 inch from my head circumference, and then I get 22 inches from my head circumference. So then I work from there. So if I have my 2 stitches in an inch, and I know that my head circumference is 22 inches, I need to now think about how many stitches are going to go around my head. So this is where we have our little bit of math. It's not hard math, but we take that head circumference minus 1 inch, which is 22, times the stitches per inch, which is 2. And that will give us the number that we need to cast on for our project. So that would give me 44 stitches that I would have for my project. Now, that's easy math, and that's the solid color knitting in the round, easy to do, right? But we complicated it a little tiny bit because we added a 4 pattern repeat. And that's the knit 2, purl 2. That alone is a 4 pattern repeat. And then when you also add in the little white heart or star, whatever we want to call that, our little white dot that goes in, that that is also a 4 pattern repeat. So if we need to adjust our head size, we need to adjust to make sure that the 4 pattern repeat is going to fit within the number of stitches that we cast on. So we cast on 44 stitches. We have a 4 stitch repeat, a knit 2, purl 2, and then we need to just do a +2 so that we have room on the ends. Actually, I was doing this. You don't need to add the +2 always. The +2 was because I was doing this flat and I was slipping a stitch. So I needed a +2. So we're going to think about it that way. If you're just going in the round, you're just accounting for the knit 2, purl 2. So in essence, it's you're knitting two, you're purling two, and if you're doing it flat, you have to add the two extra stitches. But if you're just going in the round, you just need the knit two, purl two. So those extra two stitches just frame the edges if you're flat. And if you were, so oftentimes we just look at our stitches. We don't think of them as knits and purls. We're just looking at like in a pattern, you're just looking at those stitches. So I transferred visually this just to all V's. So we knew what we were saying. So if the estimated cast on, let's say we're doing this flat, is half the amount. So Kesley, hold up your piece because you're working on a flat, straight, in not in the round, but you're doing it flat.
Mhm.
So she's got, let's say she's got the 22 stitches that she has to cast on. So when she goes to put the repeat into that, she's got to account for those two stitches on either side that are a slip stitch so that she can do the seams up the sides. So that means that leaves you 20 stitches that work the repeat, the knit two, purl two. And that fits perfectly. So that's a good number. But then you might ask yourself, well, what happens if I don't have a great number? What if I end up with some wonky number and it doesn't work out exactly? Well, that's when you just need to add or subtract to make the number of stitches that you're working with divisible by the repeat pattern, which is 4. So you can just add and subtract. You don't have to be perfect. But the one thing you want to think about is if you have 2 stitches per inch and you add 1 stitch and you're adding that in your 4 pattern repeat, that 1 stitch can actually add quite a bit to your hat. So if you want it to be tighter, you might want to go down instead of up. So you just need to think about like how much space is that going to take up. So we'll stop sharing from there and we'll come back to the end of our little presentation later on. But does anybody have any questions so far on
Yes.
gauge?
We haven't had any in the chat, Joy.
What's
So
that?
we haven't had any questions in the chat
Okay,
about the
perfect.
gauge. So I think we're pretty good. Um, I think that, it's interesting with the figuring out your measurements when you're working with different type of hats and for hats of people, you don't necessarily know who's going to get your hat. So, trying to figure out like a general, what's the average head size, that you can make. So, I don't know if that's something, if there is an average head size.
It's it's actually between 22 and 23 is kind of
Mhm.
that average size. I guess I have the average size head, which works out
Yeah.
well because when writing the pattern, it transferred pretty well.
Oh, that's great. Okay. So then
Yeah, so
following that
if
pattern size should,
yep, should work for
okay.
many.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah. Okay, so I also had my little swatch here on the table if we wanted to take a peek at how do we count those stitches if we're looking at our fabric. And this is something other people might be completely familiar with, but some of our new people might not be as familiar. And when you look at a swatch of knitting, in the beginning, it can be a little bit tricky because you can see right side up V's and you can see upside down V's. So sometimes if you look in one section, they look right side up, but then if you can also see that there's an upside down. But the way you want to look at your knitting is where that actual stitch is. So if you're, oh, and my swatch is upside down. That's good. So if you're looking at your actual stitch, the two legs of your stitch will pop up for you. So that's the actual V that you want to count, as opposed to counting what would then be an upside down V, which would not be your stitch. So you want to make sure that your stitch is the right, that you're counting each one of these stitches as one, the V, and then you're counting next to each other the actual stitches that you have per inch. And sometimes that means you have to just kind of get in there and look at your fabric and what exactly is it that you have. And then there's also the optical illusion of counting from one stitch up to the next stitch, because sometimes you can jump over to that to some other spot. So when I'm counting up or down, I like to kind of put my needle in there to make sure that I'm counting appropriately. And especially on small fabric, I like to do that because it helps me keep it straight. So that was something that I learned somewhere along the way. And
That's really
when
great.
you're
So I'm sorry, Joy, can
go
you
ahead.
do that? Can you show that again? Like, can you show the counting again?
Yeah. So when you're looking at your stitch, you want to come in there and really make sure that's actually your stitch. And the stitch, remember from last week, we talked about how it has this front leg and this that actually it has the two legs, and then the loop, there's a loop going behind the upper stitch, and that's actually what makes the purl stitch on the back. These are the
Mhm.
loops. What's the purl stitch is just that's the loop that goes behind. So you're counting one stitch and then you're coming next to it, counting the next stitch. And you want to imagine that it's looping around the V that's in front or above. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm challenged with that.
I know it's
With,
hard.
mhm.
It can be hard. And I think that's why some people skip doing a gauge swatch, because they're like, even if I knitted that, I wouldn't know what I was looking at. At least that's what I did for a long time when I first started knitting. Unless it's something like, I started knitting that variegated yarn from, I think her name is finchmod.com. But when I look at this, I can easily see this is one stitch and the color changes, and I have another stitch or one stitch next to a stitch. And then my rib stitching kind of pops out nice and easily for me. This is in ribbing. So, but when you have a color change, you can kind of see those stitches very easily from one to the next. So when you're choosing your fabric or your yarn for your fabric, you also want to think about how does that look as you're when you're going to create your piece. Does that make it easy for you or harder for you? Sometimes I think a variegated is a little bit harder than just a plain colored. Like even this one is easier to see. I don't know. It depends on what works for you and what you like. But those are
Mhm.
things to start thinking about. It's like when you're picking your needles too. Some people are like, well, what's better? The wooden needles or the metal needles? Or there's so many choices that we have, aluminum ones and bamboo ones. And some people will say, well, what's better than another? And it's not one is better than another. One is just different from another. The aluminum ones are kind of slippery and the bamboo ones are a little bit more sticky. So it just kind of depends on what you like and what feels good with what you're doing. And I think different needles and different yarn performs differently. So getting that right combination is important to do.
Totally
So
agree.
does that help and make sense in terms of doing that swatch and measuring your head and then taking that measurement and how you put all those pieces together?
Yeah. I think too, do you have a skein of yarn handy? If you don't, I have one I can throw on my overhead. But to show like on the packaging how to know, how big your swatch should be and everything like that.
Yes, I do. Because I
Okay.
have my whole little basket of yarn here.
I
Just
figured
in
you would
case
have
you
something.
just in case you ask me a question such as that one. So let me pull out a couple different ones actually to answer your question, because that is a very good question. So or maybe what would be easier is to pull out a label. All right. So if you're looking at a Woolies, which is a nice thick, this is what I've been using, kind of this chunkier one for these samples. But if you go to the back of the label, this is the most important part of the yarn, and it will tell you what kind of weight it is. This is a super bulky. And then it'll have little knitting needles and it'll have a crochet hook next to it. And it will tell you this yarn works well with a 13 US size 13 knitting needle, which is a international 9 millimeter. And it'll give you 9 stitches in a 4x4 swatch. You'll get 9 stitches in a row. In the row, and then you'll have 12 rows that go up. If you're working with a crochet hook, you would use an N or a 13 or a 9 millimeter. That's all the same information to describe one hook, but you'd get 6.6 single crochets in a row and then 8 rows in your height in a 4x4 inch swatch. So that can kind of give you the idea, like if you're reading a pattern and it calls for a certain size, that will give you some information about it. Now, on this particular one, this one tells me it's a size 4. It's a medium weight. So see, this information looks different, but it's the same. In a 4-inch swatch, this is it's you've got 13 to 16 single crochets in a 4-inch swatch using a G to an H hook, or you've got 20 to 22 stitches in a 4-inch swatch using a size 6 to a size 7 knitting needle. So your swatch, your gauge information is back here, but you know, like handwriting, knitting and crochet is unique to every individual person, and how we put those needles and yarn together. Some people will say, well, I'm a loose knitter, or some people will
Mhm.
say, I'm this, or I'm tight. I'm really tight when I knit. So I usually go up a needle size. So that's when you can start playing with what the information says on the label and what you actually pick for your knitting or crochet.
Okay, so now I have
And
a, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, and if you're tighter, that generally means that you pull your yarn a little bit tighter. And if you're loose, that means you kind of leave it looser in your hands. It's generally the kind of the philosophy. Okay, go.
So I have a question for you. If I were using, I think Marla's here tonight, but she used a different size hook, but the same size yarn. Like Marla, shake your head if I'm styling this right. Your brim was one size hook and your hat was
Oh,
another size hook.
were you
So
knitting?
what if you're doing what if you're doing like different, what if you wanted to do, say, a 4 weight yarn on your brim and you wanted to do something bulkier on the hat? How would you know how to, like, how would
Adjust
you
for
do
that?
that? Yeah.
Well, you'd still take your gauge. So you would still know, like if you were going to change your fiber size from one to the next,
Hmm.
you would still know by that gauge. You might have to decrease some stitches if you're going from a thinner fiber to a thicker fiber, or you might have to increase some stitches if you're going from a thicker to a thinner, because you're going to need more stitches per inch if you're going from thick to thin, and the other
Hmm.
way around if you're going the other way around. But in knitting, technically, if you're knitting a rib, like our original patriotic hat, technically you would do your rib in a smaller size needle than what you're knitting your above part in. But the way I wrote the pattern the way that I did because I wanted to make it as easy as possible for people. So they didn't have to buy a lot of new materials if they didn't want to. But if you've been knitting a long time, or if you're very familiar with knitting, generally your ribbing is done with a needle that's down a size. from everything else. Just because ribbing can be loose and a little bit floppy, but also the nature of this particular pattern is that
Mhm.
you kind of want the upper blue part to spread out a little bit because that's what gives you those great cat ears. So this is a little bit different than if you were going to do like a hat that you would do decreases on that would fit around the cap of your head.
All right. Did anybody else have any questions about like different fibers and combining the fibers and things like that? I haven't tried it yet. I had some, let me go grab it because I didn't pull it out. I'll be right back, Joy. You go ahead and chit chat.
Okay. All right. Well, and I got to look at the chat. So let's see. We have two. All right. The chat is open. Does anybody else have any other questions, or would you like me to just keep on going? Or do you want to open your mics and tell us what you're working on? Because I like what everybody's doing. I can see your hands going, which is really cool.
Well, I can just show you that this is the ribbing, and I used a smaller needle, and then I switched back to the larger needles, I think, to do the hat part. But this is how different it is.
Is that crochet or is that knitting?
No, it's knit. I don't know how to crochet. I can't do it.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
But you can
So,
see like the
yeah,
width of it
Mm.
yeah.
is,
So
I don't know if you can see it from the way I'm
I
holding it,
can.
but
I can.
it is probably at least half an inch difference. But I also decreased by, I think, 12, at least 12 when I cast on.
Is
Okay.
that using the smaller needles or using the bigger needles?
And I use the smaller needle. And yeah, I think I use the smaller needles. But then on this hat that I'm making, I'm keeping the smaller needles the whole way through, and I decreased. I think I did 72. So I'm down by
Okay.
10.
And you're getting the right size now?
No, I don't know. I won't know till I try it on. But I know
I
that the
know.
hat, the blue part is going to be smaller than any of my other blue parts because I've always gone back to the larger needles on the blue. But I'm just going to
Okay. So
try
you,
it and see how it goes. And then,
yeah,
I mean,
that's,
whatever. I'm just making them, whatever.
I love
But
it.
it's
That's the
really
fun of it
fun.
though, right?
Yeah. And I mean, but they really are. They're big. They're too big for me, which is okay. I'm figuring out how to make it work. But I mean, it's not that much less, but whatever. This one I did on larger needles
I
because
love that one.
thanks, but I didn't have thick enough yarn to do the overlay technique that you
Mhm.
showed last time. So I can do a single crochet strand. And so I just like the inside looks terrible, but it doesn't matter. I
I
Nobody's
mean,
saw
looking
that.
at the inside.
Yeah, that's it, nobody's gonna look at that part.
yeah, exactly. But I did your mattress stitch. I'd never done that before, so that worked out really nicely. I was happy
Isn't
with
that
that.
wonderful? It's a
Yeah,
great
it was.
stitch.
It's like
And when you
after I kind of figured out what I was really supposed to be doing, and then when I pulled it, I was like, ha, 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 this is great.
and that's another cool thing about that particular stitch. That one, once you learn how to do that, then you can do knitting that's flat and seam things together, which I think a lot of people avoid doing because they don't quite understand that mattress stitch. But that once you do that stitch and you pull the way that you're seaming it, it just everything just zips up and it's really cool. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I love it. All right. So I will show you on my overhead. Once I fix this. Sorry. I'm
Okay, let
still
me
battling this one. I hate this one. Okay. You want on my overhead. This was one I was working on in the we were road tripping this weekend. And so I was working on just kind of playing around with this, and I didn't do my swatch to Joy's dismay. But I was
That's
just kind of playing around with just doing this in the flat. And the yarn, while it's a 4,
oh,
to
that's a
get my,
chenille, right?
yeah, it's a chenille. And to get my square, my 4 by 4 square, it's 15 stitches and then 20, 26 rows. I think this is the same one. No, I'm sorry. This is a 4 and this is 18 stitches with 24 rows. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I think the reason it's like that is because the chenille is stretchier. That was my
Yep.
guess. The chenille is
Well,
stretchier.
yeah, and a chenille is going to perform a little bit differently because, yeah, it's going to, once you start knitting, it's going to bounce kind of, it's going to have a lot of bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
So meaning as you knit, it's gonna, I don't know. It's like having the hand of your fabric, right? It's gonna spring a little bit for you, so it's gonna pull in a little bit. So anybody
Right.
who like Kesley, you know what I'm talking about. When you touch fabric, and do I have any sewers in here? Yes. So when you, or even when you buy your clothes, right, as you're going through your closet, you can tell what your fabric is going to feel like and how it's going to drape and how it's going to fall on your body. And that's what's called the hand of the fabric, that drape that it gets. So the hand of a chenille is softer and it's going to have a little bit more squish, and yeah, it'll tighten up a little bit on you, as opposed to like an acrylic, which doesn't have that fluff.
Which is interesting because this is the acrylic, basically the same pattern. And the acrylic, it just, I think I did my ribs a little bit smaller, but it's the same number of stitches. So I was really intrigued how the acrylic actually did squish up a little bit more. And now, granted, I haven't gotten
Oh,
as much as this off to really tell, but it seemed like it didn't have
so
as much elastic in this part of it as it did here. So I'm going to be curious to see. I think this is going to be a little bit looser than I had intended, but we'll
so
see.
that one might flatten out and squish out then instead of
Yeah,
pulling up.
instead
Okay.
of pulling in like this one did. So I don't know. We'll see how that one goes. We'll see. We'll see. Okay.
I
Sorry, but
like
I
the
just thought that would be
rambling.
kind of fun to, I think the yarn and understanding like how to use the different weights of yarns, and then if you want to combine them, how to combine the different yarns. I think that is really, for me, that's something I struggle with because I like to be different. I like to just try something new and different.
Oh
And so
yeah,
that,
no, I get it. I get it. And
yeah.
yes, and that's the whole point, is that we should be trying something new and different. And if you're walking through the, if you're touching all the yarn, which you should be doing, is touching everything, you want to get that feel for it. And then once you start playing with the different fibers, that's when you learn the performance of different fibers. And the really cool part, Kez, is the deeper you fall down that rabbit hole of the fibers, the more you want to understand, where do they come from? What, how does it grow on this sheep? And what do you mean there are all these different types of sheep and breeds? Or if you're using a man-made material, like how does that, an acrylic yarn is really extruded plastic. So how do they get it to pull so far? And I was just at the Dallas has a fiber festival, and I was there this weekend, and it was so much fun to talk to all the different yarn vendors, and to listen to what they have to say about their different fibers, and how a silk will perform. And I was with my friend who's a spinner, and she wants to buy all the roving, and then I think back to the times that I've been at Rhinebeck or the Maryland Sheep and Wool Show, and you get to see all the different sheep and the breeds, and see how their hair, just like our hair, how it grows, and the difference between curls and not having curls, and springy yarn, springy wool, and oh, it's fun. Once you get into it, I could talk forever about it.
I love it. Well, Joy, I know you have, and I'm trying to get Janet. Janet wanted to show us her hat, but Janet, it looks like you have a different camera selected. So maybe check on the bottom where it says video, which camera you have selected. And then Joy's gonna, are you ready to show us your next, our next like exciting thing?
Our next big idea, our next crazy
Yes.
idea. Yeah, we have something else we're playing with, and the idea is that we're giving people ideas. We're trying to meet everybody wherever they are. And so Kez and I are thinking about, what happens if somebody can't knit, but they want to participate? And or you're a knitter, but you don't want to do a duplicate stitch, or you don't want to do the cross stitch. There's a cool trend out there to embroider on top of your knitting or your crochet. And we thought we'd give you a little information about how you can use a water soluble material that allows you to print from your printer onto the material. So for this one, Sulky has all kinds of different um, interfaces. And I'm going to switch that over to here. And they have this is a it's not an interface. It's just a Sulky makes a ton of interfaces, but this is a wash away. And it's like got a material on one side. I don't know if you can see that. It's got a material on one side and then like a removable backing on the other. And you literally put it through your printer with the material side. And then you can print on it. And I did it with my printer, just printed on it. And then you peel away the backing. So the backing is there just as a stabilizer. That's the word I was looking for. So it's a stabilizer. Whenever you want to peel these things, you can't do it right on the spot. But you peel it away, and then it becomes this really like nice, loose fabric that has a sticky side. And I was really impressed to see that it's stuck down to this knitted piece like really well. It's really stuck there. So I was playing around and I got a thinner fiber. This is just a single ply fiber. It's actually what I have on the wall behind me. But you could use anything. You could split one of your plies apart. You could use a piece of that. You could use embroidery floss. You could use anything you want. But along this lettering, I thought, well, if I do an embroidery chain stitch, that might be kind of fun. And of course, then we get our embroidery scales out. So chain stitch is really easy to make. You you come up in one spot and you go back down into the same spot. Whether this is your beginning or your middle, you're doing the same thing. So you go back down in the same spot, and before you pull it all the way down, you kind of leave that loop there and then come up wherever you want your next stitch to be. So I'll come up right here. And then you just come up through the loop that you made. You come up through that, and then that kind of catches and makes that chain. And then I would go right back down on the same spot and make that loop again. And just kind of move it to the side. And then take my next stitch and come up in the center of that loop and just catch it. And then you can go along and do the lettering. And then you might ask yourself, well, Joy, that white stuff sure doesn't look very nice.
Wait, so you have time to finish that off. Because as you're working on it, I can ask you a couple questions if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so Maggie's working with 2 yarns for the first time. Are there any good tips to keep the skeins of yarn from tangling and twisting?
Yes. So let me ask, did you say Maggie?
Yes. Do you want Maggie? Do you
Are
want
you
to?
It's
I think
Margie.
Maggie.
Margie.
Was it
Margie.
Margie? I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Hi, Margie.
Hi.
So are are you using are you crocheting or knitting?
Knitting. I'm sorry.
Okay. If you're knitting, are you holding your yarn in two different hands or all in the same hand?
All on the same hand. I usually just use my right hand.
Okay. So the easiest way to keep them from tangling, there's a couple
Mm-hmm.
different things. There's a ring that you can put on your finger that
Mm-hmm.
lets you put one color through. It's like a ring that has little loops on the top, and it can let you put each of your colors through there, and then you can put your colors. I'll separate them like they have to be children separated, each in
Mm-hmm.
their own bowl. And I just grab sometimes just grab my the bowls that we eat out of and put them on the floor separated, one to my right, one to my left. And then that way they won't tangle as much. So whether you use the ring or not, I don't have one of those rings.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely keep them apart from each other. And then I find that they're less likely to get mixed up. But there are also like sock bags and different kind of bags that you can get that hold a couple of skeins all in one, or it'll separate. Like one skein will come out from one side and the other will come out from the other, and then they don't tangle with each other. The other thing that you can do is go for the center pull instead of working from the outside of the skein.
Mm-hmm.
Work from the
That's what I
middle.
do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then it's less likely to kind of get, if you work from the outside, they'll tangle even more. So that's a good thing.
Because
But
the
yeah, just
doing the white stars on the blue background. That's where and carrying
yep,
over the white yarn and the blue yarn. It's like, oh, every
yep,
couple of rows, I'm twisting everything.
yep.
I saw a
Yeah,
really neat tool online today. I think my algorithm is changing, but it was just like a little piece of acrylic, like a plastic piece of acrylic that looked like a kidney bean, and it had three holes in it, and you could thread the yarn from each different spool you're using into the holes, and that kept it separated so they didn't twist on each
yeah.
other. I thought that was really
I
cool.
s- I saw that too, Kaz. I feel like that's new on the
Is
market.
it?
I don't even know what that's called. Yeah, I feel like somebody invented that and figured out how to get those printed, but they looked genius.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, of course, myself, I'm like, couldn't you just use a piece of cardboard or something that would, you could poke a hole in it and then thread your yarn through it, and maybe that would help.
Yeah, you probably could do that. That's a great idea. I never even
Yeah,
thought about that.
Thank
Yeah,
learn
you.
something
I
new every
guess
day.
I'm one of those knitters who's like, okay, this is just the problem I have to deal with today.
I
Good question, though.
like that. So, Pat, can you turn on your microphone and tell us a little bit about your hat? I'm going to spotlight you here. There we go.
Can you hear
There
me
you
now?
are. Yep.
Okay, well, I am a crocheter. I tried doing the tried knitting. I actually did try knitting the hat with the little stars, but it was beyond me. So this is all crochet. I did the ribbing here, uh, white, come up, change colors and go on red, and did it for like 19 and a half inches. Um, and then I did actually the knit stitch up here
I
for
love it.
Was that that's the waistcoat stitch up there?
is that what it's called? It looks like
Yeah.
knitting, but it's crocheting.
Yes,
Yes,
that looks
it's
awesome.
gorgeous.
Thank you. And then
That
and then
is
and then
beautiful.
I'm going to, oops, where's my camera?
Ah, oh,
Put
no way.
star appliques on there.
Oh my
I
gosh.
love it. See, this
Thank
is where the
you.
creativity, This is where the creativity is so much fun. And this is where this is what I was hoping for. I don't know about you, Kesley, but I was hoping for this where we get to share with each other, meet people we've never met before and share what we do. And that is so creative and so
I love
pretty.
it.
It looks perfect. It looks like a machine made. It's gorgeous. You're very
Yeah.
talented.
Thanks.
Did you do the ribbon? Somebody showed like made a little ribbon in the makers in hats for Harris. They crocheted like a little ribbon, like a bow.
No, that wasn't me.
That was you? Oh my gosh.
No,
Okay,
no,
that's
no. It was not me.
all right.
Somebody did that,
Well,
and then if you also look in hats for Harris, Kesley, somebody did one of those hats that's like more like a bucket hat, but then it has
mhm.
all these ruffles around the edge. It's I think it's
Oh, how
crochet. It's
cute.
to die
Right.
for.
Debbie, can I spotlight you? You got your cute little hat on. I'm gonna add you as a spotlight. And you can unmute if you'd like to tell us about, let me, wait, you're still muted.
Oh, I love it.
So mine went way crazy this way. I don't know why, but I crocheted it, and I'm going to try to knit my next one. But this one, I mean, it went pretty well. Everything, it was very easy. I followed the pattern, and here it is. It's a little big, why do you think it went out this way so far?
You know what I think it is? Because I don't have mine like that down here. I did one like that, and it mine did the same thing. It just I was like, what happened? And it went crazy on me like that. And what I think happened was when I had my brim piece here,
Uh-huh.
and I added my stitches around the edge. I think I just
Oh,
added too many.
Yeah, I think mine just started getting, it seemed to get loose. It fit around my head
Mm-hmm.
on my head okay. It could be a little tighter, but then it just ended up being so wide. But I made back in 2016, we made the pink hats,
Yeah.
and those turned out just fine. They just had little ears. I think I may have also made this one too deep this way.
Mm-hmm.
Too many
But
stitches.
it
yeah,
does
it
look
might be a
like
little
because
tough.
that's what mine did. Mine went out like this, like it completely
Yeah.
went out like this. And I thought, maybe I didn't do the slip stitch properly, and maybe I kept adding stitches to it. But I
Yeah.
I
think
feel
what
like
mhm.
yeah, in
Probably.
crochet, when you make that turn, I like
Mhm.
using a stitch marker because otherwise I feel like I can do the same thing and I'll be like, I don't know where my beginning and my end were, and then I feel like I add more that way.
Yeah, I think that's what happened to me. I was adding more because I didn't. I ended up just kept going instead of um instead I knitted I have knitted them before and they don't turn out like this. This is the first time I've crocheted it. So the next time I was watching tonight so I could get my materials together to knit the next one. So thank you for all of
I
your
love
tips.
Oh, it's
This
our
one,
pleasure. I love that you did it.
Debbie, if it make this one I did with this one's crochet, and I did a working stitch in each of the holes, or like my foundation stitch,
Uh-huh.
and it came out much better.
Yeah,
I was much
yeah.
happier with how it turned out. It didn't get
Yeah,
all wonky on me.
oh, I love that. That's what I wanted. I wanted
Yeah.
that. So,
So that's what I think happened to my other one that just got like crazy is I when I did the foundation stitch from the ribbing, I just
yeah,
think I added too many, and then at the back when I got to the seam, I wasn't slip stitching into the right one and then
yeah,
adding that chain. So then on these, while it got a little bit crooked on me, I didn't do the slip stitch and the chain one. I just kind of kept working around and around and around.
That's what happened to me. I just kept working around and it just kept getting woo, woo, bigger and bigger.
I totally
I love it
understand.
though.
Right.
And
This
I'll
is how you
another,
practice and learn.
another
And
way
you
you
look
can
great.
do it.
It's like a big old cat ear, you know. It almost looks like a whatever, a wildcat.
Oh, it looks cute, but you could just like put a little gathering stitch in those ears and pull them in a bit.
Yeah, I can. I didn't think about that. I can gather it up to make it look a little more smaller.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was
Great.
one I did a crochet on. This was my first one while Joy and I were working on these together. And I actually, and we're not going to do a pattern on this. So if anybody wants to write up a pattern, let us know. But I started my chain in the center and then worked it around and down.
Oh.
So this was from the top down, which I really liked, but I can see my like this side over here is really straight, and then this side went, well.
Yeah.
So you can see how it kind of turned out, but it looks really cute, and I'm really happy with it. And I'd love to do because I like how this one,
Oh,
like I
that's
love
super
how it
cute.
looks.
That's really cute. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I love it.
the starting from the middle and working around, and it just made it like into a tube, and it was really easy to do, but I think I just got a little aggressive on that. That was me. All
That's
right.
cute, Kez. I like that one.
Thank you. So Joy, how are you coming along on the on your vote?
Well, we were chatting and then I
Uh-oh.
stopped working, so I got this far on my vote. But Kesley really wanted me to show you how it dissolves in water. So I won't dissolve this one, but I can show you how it does dissolve, which I think is cool because I think that's one of the trust factors that we have with products. Sometimes we're like, will it really work? Will it really do what I want it to do? And
Yeah, 'cause
that's
you don't want to do all that work and then not have it dissolve.
yeah, and this is it's funny because this has been so I've worked in the craft industry for I don't know, 20 something years now. And this has always been my thing when I work with the product development teams. I'm like, but let's test it and make sure a crafter, like it's really authentic and they'll do what we say. So I'm going to peel away the backing and I brought up this bowl of water.
I made her
Trust
do
me,
it.
from down in my kitchen. It's like, when you see your kids doing something, you're like, please don't do that. I was thinking that to myself the whole way I was walking. All right, I should have started this corner. Okay, so this is the material. And when it goes into the water, it'll turn like a little bit gummy at first. And then you just agitate it a little bit and you can see it starting to dissolve in here. And when it goes into the fiber, the cool thing is that when it starts to dissolve, you kind of have to rub it. Like if I had the fiber underneath, you'd see it just starting to kind of tear apart. But when you have the fiber under it, it adds like a little tiny bit of starch to whatever it is that you did. So it'll stick up a little, it'll just hold its shape really nicely. So you can see like that will just dissolve away and it really does work. So there's proof in the pudding of that one.
I like it.
So
And I
if you
also
put it on your
I pulled out some of my I went into my stash because I do a machine embroidery, and I have this material from Kimberbell, and it's a wash away stabilizer, so it does the same thing. It doesn't go through your printer, but if you put it on, it's got the adhesive backing on it, which I really love. But if you printed something out on your printer and then just used if you sew, you could use your water soluble pen, Or if you have kids, you could just use like if they're around, you could just grab their Crayola marker and use that. That's water soluble. So you can even do your vote or Kamala or whatever you wanted to say on the material on the stabilizer, and then it would come off. So this one does have the adhesive on the back. I have other water solubles that don't have the adhesive on the back, but I really like this with the adhesive on the back for this type of project, especially when you're working with like a bulkier fiber. So I thought it would be kind of neat to share.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Mhm. All right, let me add you back in here, Daisy. Joy. I almost called you Daisy. All right. Yeah, so now let's open it up. I know we've had it opened a little bit before, but if anybody wants to share your hat, tell us about your week. I'll give you my happy note of the week. I was wearing my Kamala sweatshirt that the first one I made, and I was wearing my Kamala sweatshirt. We traveled to Greenville, South Carolina, and we were in McDonald's, and this man and his wife were leaving, and this is in Southern Virginia. Like Southern Virginia is very red. And as they were leaving, he turns to me, he's like, "I like your shirt." And it was just so cute. It like absolutely made my day. But at McDonald's, I spilled a little bit of coffee on my shirt. So when I still have some final one here. Okay. So I had to, at my son's house, I was like, "Hey, do you have some spot remover you can put on my shirt and clean it for me so I can wear it on my way home?" And I left it in his apartment, and he lives with two roommates. And one of them, she came down, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, whose sweatshirt is this? Is this your mom's? Did she make it?" And I was like, "You can have it." Like, so I passed it on to her. But I was really excited that, that he liked it and then she liked it. And then his other roommate was like, "Oh, I want one." So we'll have to send one down. But that was my like exciting moment. And I'm really excited as it does start to get chillier to wear I was gonna do early voting when we started in Virginia, but now I'm like, I want to wait until it's a chilly morning so I can wear my hat and vote in my hat.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. All right, so I'm opening up the microphones. If anybody wants to raise your hand and share about anything that happened to you this week, that got you excited. If you wrote postcards or did anything else, or how many hats you've done, we'd love to get a count. I'm ready to start receiving the packages. We haven't gotten any yet, but everything is all set up and I've got everything ready to go.
Jenny has something to share.
Hello, everybody. And if my dogs start making noise, I'm sorry. I have been working at our local headquarters, Harris headquarters, and volunteering, and that has been super fun. And I've been sharing about the hats to anyone. I'm like, "Do you crochet or knit?" Because so I'm spreading the word. And there was this 78-year-old woman who's like, ooh, I need the pattern. So I'm trying to get her connected. But the other thing I wanted to show is I don't know if you can even tell, but this is some sparkly stuff in it, like the.
I love the and now why can't I think of what it's called?
Yeah, and so it's I don't know if I can't get it to wait. You know what? I bet if I put
It's
my
got the
flashlight,
glitter.
I can make it show a little bit. Okay.
Cool.
Now, is it?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, no,
you can see it.
sparkle.
Yeah,
Okay. And
that's
so I did it.
amazing.
It's sparkly and the white and the red and the blue. And I've been playing with that. I have one where I only use the sparkle on the blue, and that was kind of cool. I don't know, I just am playing with all different kinds. And then I had
That is so fun.
Yeah,
This
I
is
like
great.
that.
Yeah.
I like that. I saw that on Facebook. I really like the way you did the red. And yes, I love that.
Well, I really wanted to like curl it over like that. And I knew that with the other pattern, we have the inside that looks like that. So I was like, I just wanted to see what it looked like. And I'm that kind of person. I'll just be like, oh, I want to know. I'll just try it and see if I like it. And I love it. So yeah. So those are my fun things.
I love it.
Love that.
Who's the sparkly yarn by?
I will tell you in 1 second.
Okay.
And why can't I think of what that stuff is called that they put in it?
I
Okay,
know,
That's
but
so
I'm
funny.
it's
Yes.
it's Big Twist, and it is called Twinkle, and it's 97% acrylic and 3% metallic fiber.
Where
Oh my
did you
gosh,
get that?
I've not seen that.
Joanne Fabric.
That's fine. That's good. All
Yeah.
right, Joanne.
And it is
Joanne,
super,
pick it
so
up.
like this one's the blue one. I don't know if you can kind of,
I can
You
see
really
it.
see the sparkle there.
it's really cool. So the sparkle on the blue is like a blue sparkle, and the red is a red
Oh,
sparkle. So here, I'll grab it.
fun.
Let me,
Oh, and if the white had like a holographic in it, how fun would that be?
Oh my
The what?
gosh.
wait, say
If the
that
white
again?
had like a holographic, like so it caught the rainbow.
Yes. Yes, I don't know.
Oh, look.
Let me see if
That
I
is
can.
so cool. See, this is the problem. We all go, this is what we do. I love
I'm
it.
gonna be
Go to
like
Joanne and pick up
knitting.
some twinkle.
I
I know
know.
this. I'm in love with this new yarn. Why can't I get this? Okay. So can you see it on this one? You probably can't. Nah. This one
Not
is
as,
more colorful. And then this is red.
Oh, you can see it on the red.
yeah.
And this is a darker red because I, of course, had to play with all of it. So yeah. So thanks
my
for letting me
gosh.
share.
I love
I
it, Jenny.
love
Thank
it.
you.
That's so cool.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm so excited now. I know when I was traveling, my husband started knitting. Mike started knitting. He's like, "Will you teach me how to do it?" So he's working on a hat and he's doing really good. I got him started on the ribbing. So he's just doing this, the knit and curl back and forth, but that's fine. And it looks so cute. So it's fun. But we went to a yarn store and we picked up some yarn and I was so excited. So it's fun.
It's so much fun. This is why
Mm.
it's so much fun.
It's
I just, I love it.
great. All right.
Well, I know
I'll
we're
sh-
right at 8.
I will
Kathleen, do
share
we
real
need to
quick.
do our, oh,
Can I
yes,
share real
yes,
quick?
absolutely.
So this is my
Wait.
fourth hat.
Hold on, hold on,
Wait,
hold
let's
on.
spotlight you.
Who's talking? Is that Mary?
This is Miranda.
Miranda. Miranda, where are you?
I'm
Oh, I
somewhere.
see. She's the portrait with the white brick behind her. Let me
Yes,
get it.
that's me.
Yeah, if you see her. Oh, there it is. Okay. There we are.
Got it.
Thank you. So this is my fourth hat. The first three I just made with the, recommended weight. But then when I was making the hats in 2016, 2017, I like to use a bulkier fiber. I'm a bass player, not a guitar player, so thicker strings.
I like that.
So I got the Lion brand Hometown in red, white, and
Mm.
blue, and I'm using size 11 needles.
Mhm.
And I just kind of like winged it as far as like how many stitches to cast on and all that, but I feel like it's coming out really well. So I'm probably ready to quit Kitchener stitch this one shut, but yeah, it's moving right along. My first 3 hats are already promised to people, but I will make you 10, at least 10,
I
to
love
ship to
it.
you. So
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
Oh,
And they look so
thank
awesome.
thank you.
that looks so good. Yeah, I like the bulk. You know what? I didn't think I would be a fan of the bulky, but I
Mm.
love it.
It
And
does
it
work.
like and it sits nicely on your head. I thought it would be like too much, but I really like the
No.
way the bulky looks.
Yeah, thank you.
I love
So
it.
nice
So,
work.
Miranda, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You said you've promised 3 of them.
Yeah.
So how did people how did people know you were making them? Were they like, oh my gosh, I saw you doing that. I want one. Will you make
Oh,
me
well,
one? Or did they see it somewhere and they're like, knew you
no,
did it?
this is to like friends and family. Like, I mentioned it to them because I'm all excited about it. So I was just like, hey, I'm making hats because there's another Women's March, and do you want one? And I've kind of been like encouraging people to contribute to Flip the Vote because they're doing really good
Yes.
like work in swing states to help organize and help people get voting and stuff. So,
I
um,
love it.
but yeah, it's just friends and families. Well, this one I think is going to be mine, and then I'll start making ones to send you.
Maybe somebody else will get it.
Right? Yeah. Who knows?
I love it's so cool. I have a it looks so good, and I love that people are asking you for it. You know, that's so cool.
Yeah,
I love
it's
it.
been so fun. Like when I made them in 2017, I met so many cool women just like randomly through Facebook, like just posting like, "Hey, I'm making these hats. If you know anybody that wants one," and it would be like, "Oh, my aunt wants one," or you know what I mean. And so I just ended up meeting so many cool people. So when I saw that this was happening, I was like, "Oh my gosh, my people! Like this is so exciting. There's a new version
We're
of the
here.
hat." Like
Yeah. And are they excited that it's like the patriotic vibe? You know, does that
I've gotten mixed responses on that. Some people are like, "Oh, well, are people going to be mad that it's the flag?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know about you, but I like really felt the same way you did. Like I'm kind of mad that like the right just kind of tries to take the flag for themselves, and we all live here too." So I don't know. To the person that was like, "Are you worried about that?" I was just like, "There's always going to be critics, and here's, you know, my reasoning on why this is important." And I think she got it. So I don't know.
that's cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And Marla is telling me that someone saw the post on Hats for Harris and asked for me to make one for her. Oh, you mailed in your first one. That is awesome. I love it, guys.
Thank you.
All right. So should we do our everyone open up your cameras and we'll go ahead and do our shot.
All right, put on your hats. Finished or not?
And
Ends hanging. We love it. Yes.
look at my messy desk.
Mary, you look amazing. You guys, that's so cool.
All right.
Oh,
Everybody
yeah.
ready?
This is
Kesley
so
and I
cool.
met in real life.
Oh yeah, Mary. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, Mary and I got to meet and we sat in our local pub and worked on our projects. It was so cool.
Oh, that's so cool.
We live very close.
Mhm.
What are the
Right, and
odds?
she was worried I was giving out my home address. I was like, no. So I'm just checking out on you. All right, everybody, give me a
Thank
big
you.
smile. Perfect. Oops. Sorry, let me do one more. Here we go. All right, awesome.
Perfect.
Well,
You guys are the best.
Go ahead, Joy. Take us home.
I was gonna say, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us and taking time tonight and just making hats and contributing on the Facebook page or wherever you're contributing. Continue talking to people, keep telling people about it. And we're excited about where we're going and the hats we're going to see at all the different marches. There are marches all over the place. So we are super excited and very happy to meet everybody. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep going, and we'll meet up next week.
Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.
Oh, and the debate is October 2nd, so I'll have a bingo card up.
Wait,
I think
October. Oh,
our next
wait a
Zoom is
minute.
October 6th. And the
We
vice
agreed to another
president,
debate?
He
the vice
agreed?
president.
Oh,
Oh, the vice president. I was gonna
Yeah.
say, oh,
So, but that'll be interesting. That'll be
it'll be a good
interesting.
one.
Yeah.
Equally
So
as good.
I'll have a debate bingo card up in our Facebook group
we
next
can
week.
wear our cat t-shirts.
Yes.
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 Cat week. Ugh.
Yes.
Ugh. All right, guys.